Hello and welcome to the Health Revolution. And today we're delighted to welcome from America on the telephone line George Eby. Now, George Eby has been carrying out health research for several decades now, and his results are absolutely stunning. At this time of year, it's the season for sneezes and colds and coughs and flus. And people seem to think that magically the germs, which have been hibernating all summer long, sneak out of their hiding places and infect us, when in fact what's really happening, amongst other things, is that we're getting devoid of sunshine by around October, and what we need is a boost of vitamin D. Vitamin D can be incredibly important for health, and I'd like to point out that back in the 30s, doctors were using vitamin D to great effect to effect cures for many of the health issues which still pervade us today. And they were giving doses then of 20 milligrams of a type of vitamin D different to the one we use today. It was a vegetable-based vitamin D and less powerful. So when they found out that so many good results were being achieved with vitamin D at 20 milligrams a day, they decided they'd change the unit of measurement. So they called the units of measurement now international units, IUs, which is the measurement we use today, and they gave the number that should be taken as 200 IUs. And merrily, people took 200 IUs of vitamin D. It became the RDA, the recommended daily allowance to keep healthy people healthy. And then recently, after some pressure, it was put up to 400 IUs. Now, going back to 20 milligrams, how many IUs is that? Well, actually, 20 milligrams is 1 million IUs, which compared to today's vitamin D rating would mean that a vitamin D level of 200 IUs a day would be the equivalent. Now, I'm not, during this series of programs, suggesting any particular dosage of anything. This is something that your health professional needs to advise you on, but most importantly, you need to educate yourself about. All the information on things like vitamin D are available right on the first page of Google, and I must advise you all to study these actually very simple subjects to find out that vitamin D is one of the absolute keys to health and happiness, as are some of the components that George is about to tell us about. So welcome, George.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us. And first of all, would very much like to ask you about your work on finding the remedy to cure the common cold, something that science appears to have been looking for decades, and it appears to have eluded science, but clearly you appear to have found it. Perhaps you could tell us all about it.
Well, it started a long time ago, maybe 35 years ago, when my daughter had leukemia, and we realized that zinc was vital for her recovery, and we got her over her leukemia in 2 weeks. And as part of that process, we were giving her zinc, and that was the agent that was helpful in her leukemia. And so one day she had a cold, and it was time for her to take her zinc tablet, and she just couldn't do it. Her throat hurt too much, so she just chewed it up, left it in her mouth, and went to sleep. 2 hours later, she woke up with no cold. That's how we discovered the cure of the common cold. It was discovered by a 3-year-old girl.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. I love that.
But that's the way a lot of major discoveries are come up with. It's by accident, and that's how I've done a lot of stuff, is by accident. And I just remember to write it down. That's the main thing. I get stuff written down so I don't forget it. But then we tried the zinc lozenges for and various other people and ourselves, and at the office and this and that, and it seemed to work pretty well. So we commissioned a clinical trial, and it showed we could shorten the duration of cold on average by 7 days with properly formulated compounds. Now, they didn't taste particularly good, and so I got patents on all that stuff, and the licensed big major companies. And the first thing that they did was they tried to make it taste like candy. Well, when they did that, they ruined the product, and that's the main reason why we don't have a commercial zinc lozenge product on the market worldwide as the cure for common cold, because there was there were clinical trials done of those faulty products, and that diluted the research with negative findings. And so about half the studies have been done in that last 30 years show efficacy. They used my formulations, and then the other half used major pharmaceutical company formulations, and they didn't work. So that's in brief. That's why we discovered the cure for the common cold, and it was lost. It's just that simple. It's known. We know how to do it. I sell them on my coldcure.com website. It's expensive because I sell it in large bottles. But anyway, it's family size dosages or family size bottles. But that's the deal. That's the only place you can get really quality zinc lozenges that actually shorten colds. We have 45 to 50 companies in the United States that are marketing candied zinc lozenges. They taste just like candy, and they have no efficacy. There's no particular reason why the government gets involved in all this stuff, so that's just the way it is. Everybody's tricked here.
Well, they certainly are, aren't they? And
yeah.
Have countries around the world discovered your lozenge, or is it mainly just in America?
I think it's mainly in America. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the product advertised outside the United States. About any of these 45 companies, I've not seen it advertised for sale outside the United States. Matter of fact, I think a lot of them won't even market outside the United States. It's just too much of a hassle to try to ship stuff overseas in small, family-sized quantities.
Well, it's absolutely amazing that the cure for the common cold has been hidden up until now, but hopefully we can bring it out into the open here in the UK and make it available for people. So you were saying it's expensive because it comes in a big bottle, but to cure the common cold for one person, one time, how much are we talking about in money terms?
Oh, okay. Like I got 80 lozenges in my bottles, and you only need 6 or 7 of them per cold. That's usually all that's necessary. Maybe 10 for a cold if it starts out bad, but it's taken every 2 hours, so you have to really hit it hard. That's the main thing, is hit it hard at the beginning. If you start halfway through a cold, what's the point in even treating it? If you start at the beginning of a cold, which is like at the when your throat's tickling and oh man, you feel then you can get a full 7-day reduction duration of colds, 6 to 7 days in reduction duration of colds.
And clearly, it's working for other things apart from colds. Perhaps you could elaborate. Would it, for instance, work for flu, or is that a whole different ballgame?
I think it can help in the flu, but it doesn't have any effect on the flu virus. Whereas the ionized zinc, it is antiviral to the rhinoviruses, coronaviruses, and respiratory syncytial viruses, which cause common colds. So the common cold is very easy to treat because with zinc ions, because it just kills the virus, and that's all there is to that. Now, another thing it does is that it protects mast cells from degranulation, which basically means that you don't get histamine release. Therefore, you don't have the symptoms of cold if you have enough zinc ion on those little mast cells, and they're in the lining of the throat and mouth and nose. So you can control allergy symptoms with this too.
And I believe that
kind of neat.
Yes, exactly. And I believe that one of the reasons that the zinc works so well in the throat, this particular type of zinc, is because of the pH of the mouth, and that the acidity is the trigger for this type of zinc to work. Would that be right?
No, it's not quite like that. All zinc compounds release ionic zinc at pH 1, the stomach pH. That's why any of the zinc compounds will actually be useful in treating diseases and being biologically available in the stomach. But in the mouth, the pH is 7.4, and there's very few ions from almost all the zinc compounds, except zinc acetate, which is what we use. And there it's still 100% ionic zinc, even at pH 7.4. And interestingly enough, if a person were to take a regular volt ohmmeter and put a terminal in the nose and terminal in the mouth, they'd find there's a 1/10 of a volt difference between the mouth and the nose, and that voltage draws it expresses electrons in the nose, and the zinc ions go the opposite direction of the flow of the ion or the electrons, and And so the zinc ions go from the mouth up into the nose where it treats colds. And it's biophysical property, and it's quite unusual. It's a major discovery that scientists have talked about biophysics for years, but this is something that anybody can demonstrate. You can demonstrate a 1/10 volt difference in voltage between the mouth and nose just with a high quality voltometer that's calibrated so it can measure in that range. But that's why it works in the mouth. So if you put zinc ions in the nose, where people would think it's logical, it's actually expelled from the nasal tissue for the most part. But if you get it on the olfactory organ, it kills the olfactory organ, and your sense of smell is terminated forever. So we don't ever put ionic zinc in the nose ever.
Oh, very interesting. And the other use is because I've read on your site all sorts of things from smallpox to herpes.
Yeah, we found an article written about 1930 where people were using zinc to treat smallpox, and apparently it was effective. And they said it was, but it was never really commercialized. And I would think that the simplest thing to do for smallpox would be just take an ionic zinc, powder and mix it in water and just coat the skin of the person with smallpox, and I think it'd probably go away just in hours or to a day. Yeah, it shouldn't be difficult to treat smallpox, I would think.
And what other?
But there's no clinical trials, obviously.
Yes.
Because there was just one reporter, one researcher back in the 30s that found that, and it was published in a book, and it's pretty hard to access that kind of stuff in books. But yeah, I think if you Googled zinc and smallpox, you'd find the articles that we're talking about.
And what are the other most amazing results that you've seen with using zinc?
What are the most amazing results?
Yes.
Oh, let's see. I think the effect of the zinc on common cold is definitely the most unusual, and perhaps the most. It has the potential of helping more people than any other thing. Now, I must comment. The entire immune system relies on zinc for its function, and if we get less than about 11 milligrams of zinc in our diets a day, we get something called AIDS, acquired immune system deficiency, AIDS, AIDS, and it's not HIV-induced AIDS, but it's a zinc deficiency-induced AIDS. Same effect, and I think that HIV virus doesn't actually cause AIDS. It causes a reduction in the amount of zinc in the body, and consequently, the immune system doesn't have enough zinc to take care of itself, and consequently, you end up with AIDS. And when they look at the virus, there's people with the virus, but that's not the cause of the AIDS. It's the cause of the zinc deficiency, which causes the AIDS. In other words, it's an intermediate step there.
Yes, I can appreciate that. And how much zinc should one be taking on a daily basis? Would you advise?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about in Europe, but in the United States, our diets are very, very zinc deficient, and they're hovering right around that range where if we just had just the slightest little bit less, we'd all have AIDS. American. A lot of people would disagree with that, but if you look at the data, it's there. And I've talked to Ananda S. Prasad at Wayne State University, who's considered the father of zinc biochemistry in humans, and he knows more about anybody else in the world. And I asked him that question, and he told me that we ought to be getting 50 milligrams of zinc a day in our diet. It's supplemental. You can't get it from your food. It's impossible. But if you get it from your food, if you get it from supplements, you're likely to never get an infectious disease once you start that. It's just not going to happen. You get a cold. That's a topical thing, but as far as a systemic infection, you're probably not going to get it. You'll stay well that way, better than anything other way. Of course, it'll also help prevent cancers and stuff like that. And there's some interesting observations where prostate cancers, they've just injected prostate with zinc acetate solutions, and the prostate cancer disappears like overnight. So there's some interesting anti-cancer properties of zinc that that have not been fully elucidated, but it looks like to me like everywhere when we start looking at zinc and cancer, we start seeing some really interesting relationships. We got to remember that's how I got interested in zinc and the common cold. I was giving zinc to my daughter who had leukemia, and her leukemia went away in 2 weeks. So or less than 2 weeks. We don't know how fast it went away, but that was the second. The first observation was made on diagnosis, and 2 weeks later she didn't have any leukemia cells. So it had to have disappeared somewhere within that 2 weeks. Was it a day or 2 or 3 or 10 days? Who knows? But it was gone and never came back. So of course now we were also treating with chemotherapy and stuff like that too. So it's not a really a clear cause and effect. But at that time, which is about 30 years ago, they didn't get results like that from chemotherapy. Nothing like that. They never saw those kind of results. So they thought for sure that there was something that in the zinc helping the chemotherapy or something like that. And I did a research paper on it and published it on zinc and leukemia, and people can find that on the internet. So.
Well, that's very interesting, and certainly anybody who has leukemia is well advised to look at your website, which is full of the most interesting research, I must say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's some other studies on zinc and cancer, but I'm not familiar with them right offhand. I mean, there's lots of them, and I think they all report benefit. But the pharmaceutical companies can't make any money selling zinc to treat cancer. It's not going to make any money, so it's not going to be commercialized. And that's the biggest problem we have in our medical systems and in our democracies is that we rely on the pharmaceutical companies to make money. If they weren't making money, well, would they even exist? I don't know. But if people understood that nutrients will prevent disease, is there any reason why the pharmaceutical companies would want us to be healthy? I don't think so. I hate to be paranoid like that, but I think I am.
I think you're right. People have forgotten that we're self-repairing, that we have the ability to repair ourselves perfectly.
How did we get well 100,000 years ago? We didn't have pharmaceutical companies taking care of us or making drugs. Nutrition did it. But at those times, people probably had a lot better nutrition than we do now. We might think that's crazy, but I think there's some truth to it.
Well, looking at the mineral content of fruits and vegetables these days compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago, it's deeply
It's obvious,
shocking.
Isn't it? There's a difference. It's shocking. Yeah. We keep using the same fields, and those fields grow crops, and the crops absorb the nutrients out of the soil. And after so many years without replenishing the nutrients in the soil, you get plants that don't have many of the minerals in them that they would normally have. And it's a serious problem. I think it's a problem for all the minerals, but the ones I'm most familiar with are zinc and magnesium. It's a huge problem for them.
Well, the cycle's been broken since we started using electric cookers and gas ovens and stopped using wood as our fuel source and our heat and our cooking source, because clearly, as I think we all are aware, all around the world, every culture cooked on wood, and the trees had been the miners mining all those layers of minerals from hundreds of feet down, and our ancestors always spread them back on the vegetable patch, and of course that cycle's been broken.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think that one fact has changed the health of everybody in the world.
I've got a little theory that I cannot prove, but I think gallium was in our diet, in our food supply, thousands of years ago. But I don't see any evidence of it now. It's like it's there. It's in nanogram amounts. But when we start looking at the benefits of gallium, it's antibacterial or bacteriostatic to almost all of the bacteria that cause disease in humans and animals. So it works out in such a way that the bacteria never become resistant to it too. So gallium is a super antibiotic agent, and we don't see very many clinical trials with it because, again, there's no ability to commercialize it since it's a mineral, and there's no way for the companies to market it successfully. certainly not make a profit out of it. But it's an amazingly strong antibacterial agent. Even the MRSA and stuff like that, staph and strep, all that kind of stuff. It's just dynamite. So.
And how does one get gallium these days?
You mine it, or you buy it over the internet.
And
you can buy gallium nitrate. You can buy gallium nitrate over the internet, yeah.
Is gallium nitrate a completely safe compound?
Well, I sell it as a treatment for horses, and we haven't had any health issues with it, or any side effects with health by giving it orally. Now, if it's given by IV, it does have some problems on the kidneys. It can cause kidney issues. But when we give it orally, we actually found that it would remove the calcifications in kidneys and remove kidney stones. And it removes a lot of these little nanobacteria-derived calcifications throughout the body, like calcified uterine fibroids and plaque in arteries. Not plaque, but calcification of arteries and stuff like that. And even cataracts got a certain amount of calcium in them. But these are little calcium plaques that occur. Little nanobacteria make these little shells around themselves. And apparently the gallium gets in there, kills the nanobacteria, and the calcium shells dissolve. And when we tried the first time we tried it on kidney stones, the lady had such a massive amount of calcification of kidneys that the next time after she took the gallium, she urinated, and the urine came out as a thick white rope and laid there in the toilet. It gives you an idea of how quickly it works on getting rid of calcifications in kidneys. So at least we've had that one observation. I don't know if it'll hold up true for other people or not, but it was pretty profound. It was so profound I refused to publish an article on it for a full year because I wanted to see how she came out of all that. See did she have any recurrence and stuff like that, and she didn't. So I thought it was pretty cool.
So would the gallium nitrate dissolve calcifications involved in arthritis or the calcification of the pineal gland?
Yeah. Now arthritis for sure. Now there is a patent on that by a university in the United States. I think it's Ohio State University patented that maybe 20 years ago. And when we were giving gallium nitrate to the horses, I sell gallium nitrate to treat navicular disease in horses. It's a disease that a lot of horses get. It often cripples. It certainly cripples them, and they're often euthanized because they can't get fixed. But gallium nitrate fixes that problem. Well, so we were treating these horses, and had these people call me and said, "George, did you know that it takes care of arthritis in horses too?" What? That's pretty cool. And so we started trying it on people, and it seemed to work in people too. So we don't have any major clinical trials. There's a small clinical trials that we had, I think 3 or 4 people. But I've had a lot of people comment after that they thought it worked beautifully for arthritis. And it has some topical pain relief properties too. You can just apply it topically, and it gets rid of a lot of pains from different sources. For example, I had a lady had a scoliosis on her back, curvature of her back, and her back had hurt all her life. And she was a middle-aged woman, and I think her husband got the gallium nitrate for a horse, and he took the pain out of the horse. So she said, "Why not try it on your scoliosis? It can't hurt." I mean, and it took the scoliosis pain away. And she couldn't believe it. She'd been fighting that pain all her life, and then there's one treatment, bang, it was gone. So gallium's got some magical properties. I think magic is a good word to use for gallium because there's very few clinical trials on it. It's been one of those agents that people have not spent a lot of time researching. But if people were to just go to my webpage on galliumnitrate.com, there's a link to another page called gallium-nitrate.com, and there's a whole list of things that it's good for, and it just goes on and on and on. It kills, you can use it for acne, perfect treatment for acne, because it kills the bacteria that cause the acne, and pimples and all that kind of stuff, boils, all sorts of nasty varmint things, and it just takes care of them, because these are all little bacterial infections, and gallium kills all the little bacteria. So that takes care of that.
Is that using it topically or internally?
Yeah, I was using it topically. Yeah, topically. Yeah, I had a huge boil on my leg one time. God, it was 4 inches in diameter and ½ inch tall, and I applied gallium topically to that. And next morning, that was in the evening. Next morning, I couldn't even find where that boil had been. It was gone. So I was really quite pleased. But we see a lot of stuff. People report to me all sorts of different things that they've used it for, and I've got a lot of them listed on my websites. And you can, it's I have on the navicular disease for horses site. There's a list of what other things is gallium good for, and the list goes on and on and on. I have a lot more fun with gallium than I have with zinc, because zinc's got some limitations. It's a good little antiviral agent. It works for common colds and herpes. Let's see what else. Zinc, common cold, rhinoviruses, and herpes are the main human viral infections, but it works against other animal viral infections too. Whereas gallium is antiviral to HIV, which I thought was pretty cool, and that's been documented by an NIH, National Institute of Health research project, and it was patented by, I think, Bernstein. And but anyway, so it's got some activity there that's pretty profound.
Have there ever been any negative comments from people using the gallium nitrate?
Hurts. Topically, it stings a little bit when you put it on the skin at the 42%, which is what I market. And so I say, well, don't use it so strong. don't apply it in such concentration. It doesn't actually hurt; it just stings. And if you get it in your eye, or if you get it in your mouth, it's really painful. Except at 1%. And 1% solutions don't hurt the mouth, they hurt the eye, but they don't hurt the mouth. But anything over 1% in the mouth hurts the mouth. And whereas, you can put 20, 30, 40, or 50% solutions on the skin. It doesn't hurt the skin, but it itches, and eventually you kind of want it. Hey, let's get this off the skin eventually, because it bothers you. But if you can stand it long enough, it'll take care of some arthritis problems, underlying arthritis problems. Because you can't believe how quick the 42% or these stronger solutions absorbed into skin. You can say you get the skin kind of wet. You can see it sitting on top of the skin. It's glistening. Well, in 20 minutes or 30 minutes or half an hour, you can look at it, and it's no longer there. You cannot see it. Even if you licked it, you wouldn't taste it. It's gone. It's absorbed into the skin and into the tissues that quickly. Nothing goes into the tissues any faster. Nothing.
Well, very interesting. How often would one take it, or would one actually be affecting a cure for something like arthritis? Or
well, I think that it's kind of like a use as needed kind of situation. So I really don't know that I have an exact answer to that. Or sometimes people take it orally, and horses are given it orally for years. Well, not years, but for months, and that's beneficial. And then there again, it's given on an as-needed basis only.
So I can imagine there are other pet owners who are very interested if it would apply to their dog or cat or whatever. Would that be true, that most mammals would respond in the same way?
Yeah. We had one of the earliest uses that we found was in a cat, and the lady called me and she said her cat had feline leukemia, and she wanted to know if gallium would help. And I said, hell, I didn't have a clue. And she said she'd try it anyway. And she tried it, and her cat got over the feline leukemia. That's all I can tell you.
Excellent.
A lot of these are anecdotes. I mean, this is all anecdotal. You can't. There's none of the data that I've got on gallium is proven. It's all anecdotal.
Well, you've certainly got some leukemia. The leukemia is cropping up both with the zinc and the gallium, clearly. Is there a forum, for instance, that's perhaps been started on gallium nitrate where people are trying it and talking about it?
If there is, I don't know where it is. I haven't seen one.
And one of the other interesting minerals that I know that you're interested in, as indeed I am, is magnesium. And you were telling me earlier that you've got effectively online an entire book that can be downloaded where you discuss magnesium as one of the answers for depression.
Yeah, all you have to do is Google magnesium and depression, and they'll find my article. My last name is spelled E-B-Y, so they should be able to find it pretty easily there. It should come up on the first page. It's about 200 printed pages long, and I'm considered by the magnesium research people to be the world's leading expert on magnesium and depression, and I've written chapters in textbooks on it, so in medical journal articles, and I've written a lot of medical journal articles on things like zinc and common cold, but the magnesium is a big deal because we're so low. So many people are so deficient in magnesium that it causes heart problems. It causes calcification of arteries. It causes just a huge number of problems. And the main thing it causes that people are most readily aware of is depression and anxiety and all sorts of mental disorders, even including headaches. People who have headaches every day are magnesium deficient. That's all that is. Migraines, magnesium deficiency. The list just goes on and on and on. If you get too depressed, it includes suicide and suicidal depression or suicidal ideation. But there's just I can't even remember all the symptoms that magnesium deficiency causes. I can go look at my page real quick and tell you, because it's so important that people understand that we're just not getting enough magnesium in our diet, and if we don't get more, we're just not going to do very well as people, as humans. We can't. For example, I'm just looking at my page now. I got a picture of a tornado at the top of the tornado. There's insomnia, headache, apathy, irritability, confusion, inattention, migraine, cluster headaches, panic attacks, habituations, hyperexcitability, delirium, ADHD, IQ loss, memory loss, and anxiety. Those are at low levels of magnesium deficiency. And then as it gets worse, then you get into strokes, hallucinations, depression, bipolar, postpartum depression, early Alzheimer's, chronic pain, suicidal ideation, and finally suicide. But that just gives you an idea of how serious this problem with humans is. If we have insomnia, if we have headache and irritability, we better start thinking about magnesium deficiency right now, because it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better unless you just take care of it. And I do comment about one thing. Nobody should ever take magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is like eating dirt. It won't help you. It's useless. The body does not absorb it at all. So they need some kind of an organic form of magnesium, like magnesium glycinate or magnesium tartarate or oxide, or orotate. There's all sorts of magnesium compounds, but just never magnesium oxide. Matter of fact, that's true for any metal. Never the oxide. Like zinc oxide, don't take it. It's not going to be helpful.
Yes, quite. And of course, some people even take ferrous oxide, which of course is rust, which is not.
It's rust.
It's not going to help.
It's not going to do anything. And the companies, the pharmaceutical companies, they're not required to test this stuff for bioavailability or efficacy at all. They just market it. And it's a shame. It's a crime against society, I think, to market things that are so necessary and yet have no efficacy. It's just sad. But I don't know. That's the way we are to do it in the United States. Maybe y'all have a better way of doing it over there. But it's kind of sad over here because the companies, they just do what they want to do, and that's that.
It's exactly the same here. You go into a high street health food store and you look at the bottle which is labeled in big letters magnesium, and sure enough, magnesium oxide is most likely to be the ingredient. I mean, it's probably great if somebody had constipation, if they had quite a lot of water and had some magnesium oxide, it might be effective, but it's certainly not going to get magnesium into the cells.
That's correct.
I spend quite some time going around the country giving talks, and I ask the audience to put their hands up if they're getting restless leg or muscle cramps, twitches around the eyes, hiccups, spasms, that sort of thing. And depending on the age of the audience, generally half or 60% of the audience put their hands up. And, of course, those are just some of the signs of low magnesium.
Yeah, those are all signs of low magnesium. The physical signs, I've concentrated almost exclusively on the mental signs, but you've definitely identified them. identified the physical ones. What's that disorder in the jaw? TMJ.
Yeah.
That's a magnesium deficiency thing too. And the lower back pains are almost always a magnesium deficiency. Twitches and spasms in the lower leg. Yeah, definitely. There's no doubt. And it's so simple to take care of these things, and yet the pharmaceutical companies, they charge you an arm and a limb for drugs that aren't the real. No one's deficient in drugs. Yeah, we're deficient in nutrients.
That's so right.
Anyway.
Well, clearly one of the most beneficial forms of magnesium is to use magnesium transdermally as magnesium chloride.
Yeah, that's the simplest way of getting into your body in a way that you can absolutely guarantee will go into the brain really quickly. Is just use 30% solutions. You can find these solutions. They're called, what are they called on the internet? What do they call them?
Magnesium oil usually gets it.
Magnesium oils. Yeah, find the magnesium oils, and they're in the 25 to 35% concentration. And they're so thick with magnesium chloride, when you put them on your skin, it feels like they're oily. And just treat your skin with it. But maybe start with a couple of legs, and if that doesn't make you sleepy, then you can try larger parts of your body. But it can be sedating. If you do the whole body, it can put you to sleep. So you just have to be careful. You don't want to get too sedated.
The first time I suggested to somebody that they take a magnesium bath in magnesium chloride, I put in clearly what for her was too much, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning. She'd only just got up a couple of hours ago, and she informed me that she had to go straight back to sleep for a couple of hours. It had done exactly
really?
that. So
yeah, really
good to use at night. I've also had people who've said, I've had the best night's sleep that I've had for ages.
Ever, yes, best sleep ever. Yeah, but I think you can sedate yourself to the point where you actually can die. So this is not something that we want to laugh about. We want to be careful about it. We don't want to over sedate because it can kill you. I have to say that it can. This can. So be careful. Try a couple of legs first, and if that's not a problem, then you can do the 2 legs and plus the torso. If that's not a problem, then you can do the whole body. But kind of go into it slowly and easily.
I think with all these things, everything is best to approach slowly
in moderation
and gently. But of course, there are many people who are having baths in a kilo of magnesium chloride, which is a tremendous concentration in a small bath, and doing absolutely fine. And of course, when people went to take the waters in Europe, it would be places like Baden-Baden. They usually went either for the sulfur or to get the magnesium, didn't they?
Yeah, magnesium sulfate was. Where was that place in Europe that had a magnesium sulfate well? What was the name of that place? I forgot now. And everybody liked it because they get really relaxed in it. I forgot now.
Well, there are quite a number throughout Europe, actually. The one that springs into my mind is Baden-Baden, but there are, I believe, many. And of course, swimming in the sea gives you a very decent amount of magnesium chloride. Part of the reason why people feel so good when swimming.
Good point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think. Let's see, what's the name of that? The Dead Sea in where is it in the Middle East is full of magnesium chloride.
Yes, exactly. And people have been taking baths in Dead Sea salts pretty much forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they come out feeling a lot better. Yeah.
Interestingly, when people have heart attacks and strokes in the emergency unit, of course, they quite often will inject magnesium sulfate as a cure to stop heart attacks and strokes in their tracks. And I've heard that...
That's how I found out about it. Yeah, I was having some kind of a heart issue, and they gave me an injection of magnesium sulfate. God, it must have been 30 years ago. But that's how low I've been. All my adult life is low on magnesium. So.
I was speaking to a doctor who was just about to take their final exams, and I asked her, what do you know about magnesium? What have you been taught in medical school about magnesium? And the doctor said to me, well, we did half a day on nutrition, but I don't remember that much, and I can't remember anything. She said, I can't remember anything about magnesium. I said, absolutely nothing at all, whether it's good for the heart or, what could it be? And she knew nothing. And I can only assume that most doctors really know next to nothing, except if they're in the emergency room. Clearly emergency room doctors who are tasked with saving your life know so much more about real medicine than your average GP, who unfortunately these days seems to be taught by the drug reps rather than, they don't seem to have time or necessarily the interest to look at natural therapies or indeed what their colleagues were doing 100 years ago.
Yeah. I think that medical doctors don't live as long as the populations that are better trained in nutrition. I've known several medical doctors that were my age, and they died, a number of years ago, weird things. And I feel like this, that the intestinal tract of a human or an animal, for that matter, is kind of like a pasture. And if you don't take care of that pasture, it's going to develop all sorts of weeds and all sorts of problems, and it's not going to be able to feed the horse very well, so to speak. I think people have problems with their intestinal tracts that just don't ever get taken care of because they're not problematic, except that they're not absorbing the nutrients out of their food like they did when the person was younger. So, I think we need, as we get older, we need more. We need supplements of all of the nutrients, every one of them. And in the United States, there I don't know of any single product that has all of the nutrients that we need, and not in a single pill. I just don't know of anything. There's some that come close, but it'd be really cool if there were. I take must be 15 or 20 different dietary supplements, throughout the day. And I'm 72, and most people think I'm looking in our early 60s. So it's certainly helped me keep myself put together better.
Well, I'm 146 myself, and people often don't realize this. Well, it's the supplements. It's very unfortunate. Clearly, our ancestors only, 150 years ago wouldn't have needed to supplement. It would have been unthinkable. Right. But now it's unthinkable not to, and it's a great shame. But luckily, some of the supplements are wonderfully inexpensive, particularly, one of my absolute favorites I brought along with me, which is just plain salt. And people think that salt is white and dry, but of course real salt that comes from dried ocean is wet and a grey colour. And while the minerals in it are inorganic, as a cheap source of balancing minerals in your body, it's very, very effective. My main favourite for mineralization is using soil-based minerals like fulvic acid, fulvic minerals, which have such a perfect balance of all those trace elements. And I see a lot of people are not only missing zinc and magnesium and chromium and so forth, but they're missing the rare earths, the rare elements that we would have got with that recycled wood ash from the trees, for example. Yeah,
anything from chromium down to molybdenum and selenium and stuff like that. That's, people hardly ever think of those nutrients as being important, but they are very important. It's a shame what's happened to people, and it has to do with where our businesses are structured. There's not a particular interest in making us well. There's just some interest in keeping us treated. So nothing. No, I don't know. I think the last disease that we actually cured was polio. I don't think it's been anything since then. I could be stand wrong on that, but it strikes me that's true.
Well, they're clearly not looking for cures. They're looking for treatments. And when people go to the doctor, they've lost their health, and they go to the doctor believing that their doctor knows about health, can help them restore it. But health, of course, isn't on the curriculum for doctors. They're just taught. That's correct. Taught about disease, and that comes as a bit of a shock to people.
Yeah, it's a strange paradigm that we have. It's certainly not one that's promoting health and longevity at all. That's what I'm interested in, is longevity. And I'm doing it in a manner which, I'm still as active as I was when I was in my 30s, and I'm 72. And I attribute it totally to proper nutrition.
And I think one could add getting the toxins out as well, and to some degree, of course, proper nutrition does remove the toxins. But I've noticed there are two types of toxins. There's the physical type from our toxic environment and the toxic food, but there are also those toxic thoughts where perhaps somebody at school said, "Well, you're not good enough, or you'll never amount to anything," and those toxic beliefs need to be shed as well.
Yeah, that's cruel. Yeah, I hate to see people do that. Yeah.
So,
if people had more magnesium in diets, they could tolerate that. They could tolerate abuse a lot better because it kind of goes over their. It doesn't bother you as much. Because one of the things that one of the main reasons we're low in magnesium is stress. Stress drives down magnesium. Anybody that has a stressful life, for whatever reason, has to have a lot more magnesium in their diet because that stress will deplete magnesium faster than anything else. And there's nothing you can do about it unless you accept to replace the magnesium.
Well, it's so true, and clearly 99% of us, I would think, are stressed. Certainly when I discovered magnesium, I'd recently realized that I was actually an anxious person. I'd always looked at other people and thought they were anxious, and I'd realized one day that it was me. And as soon as I started using magnesium on my skin and just rubbing it in after a shower and before bed, I found that the sort of panicky, worrying stuff that was really overtaking me and stopping my sleep dropped away. I felt so much better. It was amazing, and it's inexpensive as well. It's not even as though you've got to spend a lot of money.
Yep. Yes, good nutrition is the cheapest insurance plan you can possibly get. There's nothing that'll extend your life better and keep you in better health than good nutrition. Insurance companies can't do much about this either. All they can do is take your money and maybe give it back to somebody some other time in the future. But one of the things on my website is an interesting little graph. They were treating this one woman. I forgot what her disease was. They tracked her for months on what her magnesium levels were, and they were giving her magnesium oxide, and she wasn't getting any better. It wasn't getting any better. It wasn't getting any better. And then one day they decided, well, let's try something else, and they tried a different type of magnesium. I think it was magnesium chloride. And bang, like overnight, her symptoms went away. I think it was magnesium sulfate. And bang, her symptoms went away overnight, and her magnesium levels went straight up. It just gives you an idea. I mean, it was really, that one study was so clear. They were given intravenously. They were given the magnesium intravenously. So it was pretty interesting how people respond to proper treatment. And I can't understand why any company would market magnesium oxide unless they believe it's effective. But yet there's several. I think there's 3 or 4 outstanding clinical trials that absolutely show that magnesium oxide is not biologically available, period. So why do we continue with these things? Ignorance, I think. I think these companies are basically just ignorant. How can they be so contemptuous to treat people with something that's useless?
Well, a patient cured is a customer lost. So I think a lot of these companies care only about their profits. And clearly, magnesium oxide is very, very inexpensive. Yeah,
and it does. It sure does. It sure does recover from an awful lot of diseases. So a lot of profit can be made out there with the various different drugs for all the different problems that people have. When all you really need is more magnesium and more other, nutrients. We haven't talked much about vitamins at all. We're talking about nutrients, like real nutrients, like minerals. There's where that's important. I guess everybody's been told about vitamins, but no one's been talking much about magnesium or about nutrients. So it's a shame that we don't think more about about minerals as nutrition. They just don't. So anyway, it's one of my little concerns.
Well, I think it's a pretty big concern because clearly you can take as many vitamins as you like, and unless you've got the minerals, you can't assimilate the vitamins anyway.
That's right. That's right.
And without magnesium, clearly there are problems assimilating potassium and problems assimilating sodium.
That's right.
It just goes on and on.
It goes on and on and on and on. Yeah.
So I'd be very interested to ask you, with your own personal regime, you said you took sort of 14 or 15 supplements, which ones you perhaps might recommend for generally, perhaps all of us? What could you say, for instance, what your top 10 might be?
Oh my! I have to. Yeah, you have to have me to have to think here for a minute. Well, I think zinc and magnesium are definitely the number one. I'm not even going to say number one and number two. They're number one. Zinc is required by your immune system, your T cell lymphocyte system to fight infection. The T cells they kind of regulate the entire immune system, and if they go down because of lack of zinc, you're likely to get any of a zillion different diseases, and you won't have any resistance to them. And then magnesium is also very, very broad spectrum in its activities. So those two together, I think they're the most important. I think it's too early to say about a dietary need for gallium, but those are the three minerals that I have the most experience in. But from what I can tell, my guess is that there's a lot more gallium in our diet thousands of years ago, and that probably had some antibacterial benefits and probably kept people healthier than they would have been had they not have had the gallium in the diet. And there's some logic there that's probably quite right. Let's see. Those three are kind of interesting to me. Of course, I take vitamin A, vitamin Bs, all the vitamin Bs, very large amounts of vitamin B12 for my heart, and let's see. Vitamin D, I take 10,000 international units of vitamin D, which is the minimum required to help prevent cancer. So I don't know much about that other than what the people have mentioned on the internet, but that supposedly is supposed to be the minimum that's required to help prevent cancer. Let's see, I take vitamin E. Let's see, minerals. I take zinc, magnesium, selenium, iron. I don't take any iron. I don't take any iron at all. I'm too old for that because you get high iron in your blood, and that can cause serious problems for you. Matter of fact, people who have too high of an iron level, you literally have to go out and give blood to get rid of it because it can be toxic. Now, other people, particularly people who are women who are menstruating a lot, they need iron in their diets because it's lost in their menses. But old men like me, we need less iron. We need zero iron. We get too much iron just in our foods. Let's see. I can't come up with anything right off the hand. Let's see. Manganese. I take manganese. I could go look at my little kitty box of dietary nutrients, but it's just all the stuff that you see, in the stores. Take one of everything, and that's pretty helpful. Because we're low on all of these things, we're not high on any of it. So, except for iron, there's a real risk in older people that we could get too much iron. That's dangerous. So, and yet people are taught to take a lot of iron.
And could I ask you about fish oils? There seems to be.
I'm sorry. That's my number one. That's my number one product that I take. I take enormous amounts of fish oil. And the reason is really very simple. If you look at the numbers, the reasons for people having lethal heart attacks, it's not what you've been taught. It's the problem. It's low omega-3 essential fatty acids. That is the number one reason people have lethal heart attacks. So we've got to be taking that. Let's see. I got a little article right here. Relative risk of sudden cardiac death by risk factor. Let's see, none of homocysteine, total cholesterol, low density lipoprotein, high density lipoprotein, total whatever the ratios between total cholesterol and high density. None of those CRP, none of those were important, nowhere near as important as inadequate omega-3. Now, that does not mean flaxseed oil. Flaxseed oil is not a true omega-3. Don't take flaxseed oil. It's another one thing, kind of like zinc oxide or magnesium oxide. It's fraud. But anyway, I guess inadequate CRP or low CRP is a risk for sudden is important, but omega-3 deficiencies will just kill you. They're just nothing any worse than that. You can't survive it. Young people seem to be able to get along without it. But once we get old, we can't handle it. We have to have the omega-3. Now, we don't want to ever take omega-6 because that omega-6 is vegetable oil, okay? And what we were trying to balance is omega-3 versus the vegetable oils. Well, fish oil versus vegetable oil are genetically, 100,000 years ago, we ate fish. We didn't eat vegetable oil, and our entire body is programmed for fish oil or meat, not vegetable oil. So once we started making things like Wesson oil and other plant-based oils and use them in our diets, they seemed okay. But once you start looking at the number of people who die from inadequate omega-3 or fish oil relative to Western oil, vegetable oils, I shouldn't use proprietary names. It's really kind of scary. It's real scary.
Well, it's certainly very sad watching people eating margarine and the highly processed oil. I mean, rapeseed oil, which would be canola in America, and sunflower oils, if they're not pressed between stones. All the modern ways of extracting oils are absolutely killing people, damaging their brains, damaging their hearts, their arteries, everything, clearly. People have been taken for a ride.
Coconut oil is almost is over 90% saturated oil. And so is butterfat, palm oil, all of those. Beef tallow is like 49% saturated fat. And you have to get, you can't, and at the top of this, flaxseed oil is like 57% omega-3, but it's not the type of omega-3 that we can use. So we can't do that. Now, canola oil is pretty good, but we have to have for it to be helpful to us, we have to be using fish oil. We can't just use any other types of oil. And olive oil is probably the least harmful. It has a lot of monounsaturated fat in it, but none of these oils have any omega-3 unless you use the fish oil. So it's a real serious thing. We're just not doing things right at all. These are major errors. Not having. Well, when you come over here and you look at the pharmacies in the United States, you find row after row after row after row of fish oil products. The pharmacies have figured this out. So have the health food stores, and so have the grocery stores. There's no way that you can pass. You cannot. You will find fish oil in the United States very, very readily. It's very readily available. So we've picked up on that. Now I don't know if people are using it to the extent that they should be, but well, anyway, and they need to be using it more.
What do you think of the quality issue of most of the fish oils that are around? Because I'm not sure whether I trust a lot of the commercially available oils. What would you think?
Well, I don't know, but if they advertise it as having, as being true DHA and EPA and stuff like that, then they should be, they're under a legal requirement to have that in the product. But I think that the main problem is that we're talking. The doctors want to talk about. Well, you need more fish. Take salmon. Get salmon in your diet. Well, most of the salmon that's available is farmed salmon, and they don't have any omega-3 in it. It's omega-6. And East Coast to the United States, salmon is also omega-6, and the only salmon with omega-3 in it is West Coast, northern, way up in the northern, up around Alaska, wild salmon. So, and it's kind of hard to get. It's expensive. So I'm not so sure that we can reliably say that salmon is a proper source of omega-3. I know we can't. It just depends on where it's grown, where it lives, and I don't know why. I don't know the difference between the omega-3 content of West Coast salmon and East Coast salmon, but it's there, and that's all I can tell you. it's there. And so we got to avoid the West Coast. We got to avoid the East Coast. We got to avoid the farmed salmon. We got to avoid the flaxseed oil, and that kind of limits it down to some pretty specific products. Now, I really do hope that these products that they're labeled EPA and DHA EFAs are good. I really hope they are, but I certainly don't have any way of testing for it. I know one thing: it's properly, fish oil is very anti-inflammatory with EPA and the DHA, and I had some horrible pains in my shoulder, and I couldn't get rid of it with gallium nitrate, so I started taking large amounts of fish oil. Matter of fact, I was taking the same size doses that my horse was prescribed, because we give horses. There's a product called Well Pride at wellpride.com. It's a gallium nitrate. It's a fish oil supplement for horses. And so I was taking the whole dosage for horses a day, and about 2 months later, my shoulder cleared up, and it's never given me a problem anymore. So between gallium nitrate and fish oil, we can probably take care of any of these arthritic kind of problems if we get enough of it. And what's enough? Well, for me, it was enough for a horse. In other words, a couple of tablets wasn't going to do any good. A couple of capsules wasn't going to do any good for me at all. I had to take it, like an ounce a day. I stunk like a fish.
For those who just wanted to eat their way to omega-3 health, I would have thought the least expensive way here in Northern Europe would be sardines and mackerel.
Probably, yes. Yeah, I don't know anything about the issues with with those, like they are with salmon.
Well, being young, sardines, for instance, being young fish, they don't accumulate the mercury. And having been to a fish farm, I would never eat farmed fish ever again. I always assumed that farmed fish usually had an all right life. I hadn't realized that they were lined up like rows of sardines and couldn't actually turn around or move. And that the reason that sometimes you see the ends of the tails look a bit like they've been nibbled, it's because the fish behind has actually nibbled the tail of the fish in front for all its life. It's frightening, and with the antibiotics in there. So I would advise everybody to only buy fresh, real fish that comes from clean oceans. Very important.
Yeah. I think, if I remember right, they feed the farm fish corn products. So they get a lot of corn in it, and that contains omega-6, and that's why they get omega-6 instead of omega-3 out of those farmed salmon, as I understand it, as I remember.
Well, these days, of course, they're topping it up with a lot of soya, which is, again, massively wrong in omega-6s. So, and they're feeding it to chickens. So if you feed a chicken soya, you end up with eggs that have 20 times more omega-6 than is normal and natural, which is pretty shocking, really.
Yeah, really scary.
There is one bit.
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say there is one bit of good news coming from the ocean, which is that while the fish are being decimated, hoovered up by the factory ships, that the squid, the calamari, are doing fabulously well. And so there's an excess of calamari, you might say. And apparently the oil from calamari makes fantastic fish oil. So, whereas the cod are running out, we can use the waste products that they're actually throwing away from the squid, which is now making a very good oil.
Good.
So bad news for squid, but good news for us, I think.
Really? Yeah, well, we tend to mine everything too extensively, and we're running out of resources. Just whichever one's going to hurt us the worst is firstest. Worst is firstest. But yeah, food's. I'm afraid for omega-3. We may or may not run out of that pretty soon because it's a limited resource, and we're starting to really understand that we need a lot of it. So it's hard to figure out if we're going to have it enough, long enough time or not.
Well, I think it's squid to the rescue. What do you feel about hemp oil, the oil of hemp seeds, as an omega-3 source?
I don't know anything about it at all. Nothing.
My understanding about hemp seed oil is that it is extremely beneficial. I use it personally and have been very impressed with it. I also eat hulled hemp seeds because the crunchy outside of the hemp seed is not that pleasant. But hulled, they make a fantastic, very, very balanced, protein-rich, oil-rich nutrient, and you can sprinkle it on salads or on yogurt or whatever you like. I'd recommend having a look at hulled hemp seed. It's very, very delicious. So we're coming to the end of the program, and I thank you very, very much for coming on, and I would encourage viewers to go to coldcure.com to look at the zinc acetate, and your research site. Perhaps you could just tell us the name of that site.
That's George-EBY-research.com. And my gallium nitrate sites are pretty easy to find. Just Google gallium nitrate and you'd find them quickly.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very, very much, George. And
Clive, I appreciate it. Yeah, this has been cool.
Very good. And for viewers wanting to seek out magnesium chloride, I must confess an interest in the company I'm going to recommend, which is Ancient Purity. But we, I believe, sell the best and the least expensive source of magnesium chloride spray. It comes from I think we believe a 300 million year old underground source, as natural as you can get. So many thanks, George, and thank you,
thank
viewers.
You.
And see you all again soon. Cheerio.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Important for health, and I'd like to point out that back in the 30s, doctors were using vitamin D to great effect to effect cures for many of the health issues which still pervade us today. And they were giving doses then of 20 milligrams of a type of vitamin D different to the one we use today. It was a vegetable-based vitamin D and less powerful. So when they found out that so many good results were being achieved with vitamin D at 20 milligrams a day, they decided they'd change the unit of measurement. So they called the units of measurement now international units, IUs, which is the measurement we use today, and they gave the number that should be taken as 200 IUs. And merrily, people took 200 IUs of vitamin D. It became the RDA, the recommended daily allowance to keep healthy people healthy. And then recently, after some pressure, it was put up to 400 IUs. Now, going back to 20 milligrams, how many IUs is that? Well, actually, 20 milligrams is 1 million IUs, which compared to today's vitamin D rating would mean that a vitamin D level of 200 IUs a day would be the equivalent. Now, I'm not, during this series of programs, suggesting any particular dosage of anything. This is something that your health professional needs to advise you on, but most importantly, you need to educate yourself about. All the information
in the United States that are marketing Candid zinc lozenges. They taste just like candy, and they have no efficacy. There's no particular reason why the government gets involved in all this stuff, so that's just the way it is. Everybody's tricked here.
Well, they certainly are, aren't they? And
yeah.
Have countries around the world discovered your lozenge, or is it mainly just in America?
I think it's mainly in America. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the product advertised outside the United States. About any of these 45 companies, I have not seen it advertised for sale outside the United States. Matter of fact, I think a lot of them won't even market outside the United States. It's just too much of a hassle to try to ship stuff overseas in small, family-sized quantities.
Well, it's absolutely amazing that the cure for the common cold has been hidden up until now, but hopefully we can bring it out into the open here in the UK and make it available for people. So you were saying it's expensive because it comes in a big bottle, but to cure the common cold for one person, one time, how much are we talking about in money terms?
Oh, okay. Like I got 80 lozenges in my bottles, and you only need 6 or 7 of them per cold. That's usually all that's necessary. Maybe 10 for a cold if it starts out bad, but it's taken every 2 hours, so you have to really hit it hard. That's the main thing, is hit it hard at the beginning. If you start halfway through a cold, what's the point in even treating it? If you start at the beginning of a cold, which is like at the
Hello, and welcome to the Health Revolution. And today we're delighted to welcome from America on the telephone line, George Eby. Now, George Eby has been carrying out health research for several decades now, and his results are absolutely stunning. At this time of year, it's the season for sneezes and colds and coughs and flus. And people seem to think that magically the germs, which have been hibernating all summer long, sneak out of their hiding places and infect us, when in fact what's really happening, amongst other things, is that we're getting devoid of sunshine by around October, and what we need is a boost of vitamin D. Vitamin D can be incredibly...
Remember to write it down. That's the main thing. I get stuff written down so I don't forget. But then, we tried the zinc lozenges for and various other people and ourselves, and at the office and this and that, and it seemed to work pretty well. So we commissioned a clinical trial, and it showed we could shorten the duration of cold on average by 7 days with properly formulated compounds. Now they didn't taste particularly good, and so I got patents on all that stuff, and the licensed big major companies. And the first thing that they did was they tried to make it taste like candy. Well, when they did that, they ruined the product, and that's the main reason why we don't have a commercial zinc lozenge product on the market worldwide as the cure for common cold, because there were clinical trials done of those faulty products, and that diluted the research with negative findings. And so about half the studies have been done in that last 30 years show efficacy. They used my formulations, and then the other half used major pharmaceutical company formulations, and they didn't work. So that's in brief. That's why we discovered the cure for the common cold, and it was lost. It's just that simple. It's known. We know how to do it. I sell them on my coldcure.com website. It's expensive because I sell it in large bottles. But anyway, it's family-size dosages or family-size bottles. But that's the deal. That's the only place you can get really quality zinc lozenges that actually shorten colds. We have 45 to 50 companies.
On things like vitamin D are available right on the first page of Google. And I must advise you all to study these actually very simple subjects to find out that vitamin D is one of the absolute keys to health and happiness, as are some of the components that George is about to tell us about. So welcome, George.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us. And first of all, would very much like to ask you about your work on finding the remedy to cure the common cold, something that science appears to have been looking for decades, and it appears to have eluded science, but clearly you appear to have found it. Perhaps you could tell us all about it.
Well, it started a long time ago, maybe 35 years ago, when my daughter had leukemia, and we realized that zinc was vital for her recovery, and we got her over her leukemia in 2 weeks. And as part of that process, we were giving her zinc, and that was the agent that was helpful in her leukemia. And so one day she had a cold, and it was time for her to take her zinc tablet, and she just couldn't do it. Her throat hurt too much, so she just chewed it up, left it in her mouth, and went to sleep. 2 hours later, she woke up with no cold. That's how we discovered the cure of the common cold. It was discovered by a 3-year-old girl.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. I love that.
But that's the way a lot of major discoveries are come up with, is by accident, and that's how I've done a lot of stuff, is by accident, and I just